fake it till you make it. Is fake it till you make it a good thing? It is something that you would recommend. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Sensation Nation.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome or welcome back to another episode of Sensation Nation. I'm super excited about two things today. One, I'm excited about the topic that's about to be discussed, but I'm also excited about the person that I'm going to be discussing it with. So there's this thing out there called the imposter syndrome that I heard about a few years ago, and I started to dig into it, and I'm like, man, that sounds kind of intriguing. And then as I started to dig into it, I realized, man, I actually have felt that imposter syndrome before. I've been through it, I've experienced it. And I also believe that people experience it quite often and don't even know that they're going through it. So I felt like this is an opportunity, one, to educate people on what imposter syndrome is, how you can overcome it, and just kind of really dive into it a little bit. Now, the guest that I'm about to introduce is somebody that I highly, highly respect. I actually have, here's the real part about it. I have never actually met her in person. She was my instructor, my professor during a leadership development course, and I have told people on many, many occasions, it happened to be during COVID. I didn't get to go in person, but even though it was virtual, it by far was one of the best courses I've attended in my entire career. And I've been telling folks that for quite some time. She's a trailblazer. She's a family woman. She's just really kicking some butt. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to welcome to the show, Colonel Stephanie Wilson. Ma'am, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I mean, how do you follow that kind of introduction? Like, what is that?
Hey, when you're introducing somebody so great, it's like easy. It just comes, it just comes naturally.
If I could turn red, that'd be a thing. But thank you. Thank you. And we worked really hard with LDC and trying to make that effective learning environment as comfortable as possible over this mechanism. And I appreciate what I see from you, and I'm excited about our talk today.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, I know you're busy, but I'm going to tell you in advance, thank you for your time. So with that, I'm going to go straight into it with the first question. We talked about the subject of imposter syndrome a second ago. Have you heard of imposter syndrome? I know this is kind of a rhetorical question because I know you have, but what do you know about imposter syndrome?
So, truth to power, I didn't really understand what that was until I was in the middle of my doctorate program. And as I'm finishing it, and I'm starting to write. And my mom told me that I needed to get used to people calling me Dr. Wilson. And I said, but I'm in the military. I have a military title. Like that seems a bit pompous. And she's like, it's not. It is what it is. And it literally was that conversation with my mom who was like, oh, it is what it is. Right. And I started kind of examining how I felt about titles, how I felt about entering a space and what I felt like. And so I began reading about this emotion of feeling a little less than, even though you were vetted for entry. So how do I feel less than when I've already been vetted? I know I have the things and I'm now getting a seat at the table, but I don't necessarily feel like I should be there. You kind of walk in and go, do they know that I don't know that acronym? Were they aware that they invited me? And so in the back has like 10 years of experience, but I'm sitting here. Why? And it truly came to a head at the beginning of my first command when I got a call from a mentor who reminded me to not change myself because they hired me. And so to me, imposter syndrome is fought really well through being authentic and figuring out how to be more comfortable in the skin you're in. And the more authentic you are and the more that's received, wow, it can give power to you to walk in those spaces.
Just being your authentic self is what I'm hearing. But I'm going to tell you, everything you just said, it kind of pierced my soul, and not in a bad way. I felt everything you just said because everything you just described, those are the thoughts that have gone through my head quite often, even in my current environment right now. I have to remind myself, you are blessed to be in this room and you're here for a reason. But
Yeah.
I don't know, for some reason, it's just so hard to shake. Like, man, do they know that oh man, they speak so well and they know more about this than I do. And I don't know if I should be here. And it's that thing that you're constantly battling, I think. And, hopefully my wife will hear this too, because my wife has a very hard time being called Dr. Sims. And I'm always like, hey, you earned that title. You need to rock it, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of like being how your mom was to you. So let me ask you though, what do you think is the cause? Like, what do you think causes one to feel imposter syndrome?
So my research has mainly dealt with female causes of imposter syndrome. Although research shows that men feel at the exact same rate, it's not always reported in the same way.
Mm,
And I'm actually kind of trying to find how guys call it, because it might not actually be imposter syndrome in a gentleman's mind. It's like get your game face on.
mm.
And so I think about sports, right? So I'll back up and I'm going to answer the question I want to. I thought you were
Sure.
the one you
Yeah, yeah,
asked. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah,
um, so I watch sports with my husband because he makes me, not necessarily because I want to all the time, but I really enjoy those sideline getting people revved up conversations. And so to me, a lot of gentlemen exhibit some imposter syndrome when they have to repeat a practice over and over again, over and over again, over and
Mm,
over again, in
mm,
order to just have that muscle movement of comfort. Sometimes ladies don't do that.
mm.
um, Basically, most of us are a little more social and are looking for some more words, some words of affirmation, some understanding of where we came from, and just you got this. It's
Mm,
going to be good. I'm in your corner. Honestly, for both sexes, the I'm in your corner means a great deal.
mm, mm.
And I think as leaders, heck, as human beings, we need that more, because imposter syndrome isn't necessarily related to a job. It can be related to being a parent. I'm sitting here with 4 kids of various
Mm.
ages, and I distinctly remember walking through, when you finally take your kids out to eat
Right.
and you're like, don't act a fool. But you have like a little one who they don't know, not act a fool per se, and they're just being little, and they're like, eat your face and like
Sure.
crawling over things. And you're just like, I just want my food hot today. I just want a hot meal
Right.
that somebody else brought to me. And I distinctly remember being that mom, and this elder came over to me and she said, you're doing fine.
Mm.
It's going to be fine.
Wow. Wow.
And that feeling that came through me, like, oh, thank you, village. I'm
Yeah.
not doing this totally wrong. The same goes into when you walk into a room. And most of us, I think most of your guests are military like us.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we walk into the room and we have our bios on our chest, right? Our
Right. Oh yeah.
biographies
Oh yeah.
are across our chest. You know my name, you know my service,
Right.
you know my career field.
Yep.
You'll know what unit I'm a part of. Depending on the pendant upon my career field, you'll even know how long I've been there,
That's right. That's
right?
right. That's right.
And so when you walk in, people have one idea, right? Bias is normal. It's
Yep.
it's normal, people.
Yep.
Bias is normal.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Let's
so
let's let's normalize the bias.
let's normalize the bias. It saved people's lives in the past. It's just when you use it for evil, that's when it's a problem.
There you go.
But when you walk into a room and you look around, and for most of us, we're looking for maybe somebody with our tribe,
Mm.
right? Or you're looking maybe for somebody who kind of looks like you, somebody you might have known from a former base,
Mm-hmm.
somebody you might have known even from a former life if you're a prior enlisted or et cetera.
Right.
And if you don't find that, or if you feel like you're the only one,
Mm-hmm.
or you feel like you might be the youngest one, or you might be the only one who comes in with this perspective,
Mm.
or maybe you heard that person at the head of the table doesn't take controversy or discontent
Mm.
well.
Mm. Mm.
It can just feed into the brain's fight or flight mechanisms, right? Fight, flight, or faint. It's actually the other one. Don't do that.
Don't do that one. We
Right.
don't recommend
Don't
that
do
one.
that. But it just feeds that monster inside of you that says, you're supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Do they know?
Mm.
Will they listen when you speak?
Mm. Mm.
And I give advice to those that I coach, to those that I try and mentor, heck, to my kids. The only power people have over you is the power you give them.
Mm.
And when you get into a situation where that monster is just eating away at you, recite that.
Mm.
Make that your repetitive muscle movement of I was vetted before I entered the room. I'm supposed to be here. My opinion counts. And then approach whatever leadership, whatever situation with that intellect, and even use the most powerful statement in our inventory. You ready?
Here we go.
I do not know, but I will find out.
There you go. There you go. Sometimes it's okay to say that, but that is so hard. And I think we could probably dive into why that's so hard when we start talking about the 5 types of imposter syndrome. And maybe as I did my research for this, I kind of learned why that may be such an issue for people to say, I don't know. But you talked about something, and I know we're talking about imposter syndrome, but you talked about wearing your biography on your chest, and depending on what uniform you're wearing, I mean, with the ribbons that you're wearing and all that stuff, people can really kind of get there, conceptualize who you are, how you got there, so on and so forth, just from what they can see. And I always refer to that as, they're sizing me up. Like I feel like people are sizing me up all the time. Have you ever felt like you walked in a room and someone's just sizing you up, and now you have to really kind of put on that armor to be like, hey, I don't want to feel like an imposter.
Oh, for sure. I mean, hello. I'm an African American female. I'm in a predominantly male career field. For a hot minute, I got a couple of emails from my functional that said Stephanie and guys,
Oh,
because where that was, I was the only lady there.
mm.
Um, I'm also a little curvy, not out of shape, just curvy, right? And so our uniform isn't really built for my particular stature. So
I see.
sometimes I walk in and I don't feel as amazing as I
Mm,
see other people look in their uniform.
mm,
I don't feel as if I'm standing the way I think they think I should be standing in
mm,
my uniform. And I'll
mm.
tell you, what's interesting is the people who have, and I'll use a young person's term, gassed me up the best
Mm-hmm,
before I
mm-hmm,
walk out,
mm-hmm.
NCOs,
Yep.
because I usually have an NCO check my uniform, like, hey, I'm about to do a thing.
Right.
Let's just make sure I haven't overlooked something, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because a second
mm-hmm,
pair of eyes never hurts. And I distinctly remember one of my tech sergeants, unfortunately, he's passed now, but one of them, he
mm.
had leaned back and he was doing the, everything level, blah, blah, blah. And then he went, you look good, man. And I was like, thank you. And then we moved on. But that's the way to give a compliment. And I walked in feeling as good as I wanted to in this uniform that represents our country, my parents who were in, like all those different things. And so there are many times I've walked into a room and said,
Mm,
deep cleansing breath.
mm,
But I'll also say I have been fortunate to have leaders who, when I did give the opinion that wasn't the most popular, that might not have been what they wanted to hear,
mm.
I've had examples of both responses, not just one.
I see.
And
I
so
see.
I've been able to tuck that in behind me, like, okay, that's just how they react to things. Got it. This is not always the norm. Maybe I could phrase it differently.
Right.
And going a little inward. And so I try to hold on to that when I walk in and feel alone some
Right.
days.
Right.
But as I've gone up in rank and been advised by those higher in rank than me, there's kind of what you said. There's a reason why we're in the room.
That's right.
It's not
That's
just
right.
it's not this.
Right.
It's this. It's
Yep.
this.
That's
Right.
right.
And so I'm in the room to make the case for those who aren't able to speak now. I'm
Mm,
in the room to bring a perspective that maybe someone else hasn't considered. I am in the arena to make sure that I'm fighting this battle so the person behind me can fight the next battle.
ooh, I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what's actually at this point in my career, in my life, that's really kind of in my head.
Mm.
What can I do to aid in advocacy? And that has truly helped a lot of the imposter syndrome go down, because I'm 40 some odd years old. Who am I impressing but myself? Right. Like I have goals and stuff, but
This is fire. I feel like I need to make some fire emojis go across the screen
Do it.
while we're
Just have
doing
them run across the street.
Let me ask you, I brought this up on a different podcast, but I think it's appropriate here as I listen to you talk, because you have to put on that suit of armor, whatever it may be, when you walk into a room. I have a little routine I do if I'm about to go brief some person that's of higher stature, or if I'm about to even brief my peers, whatever it is. I get, like you said, I gas myself up. I get gassed up before I leave my house, whatnot, and I walk in there and I get the job done. And it brings me to the question that I brought up on a different podcast. Fake it till you make it. Is fake it till you make it a good thing? It is
Yes.
something that you would recommend. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, because what you're doing, that whole repetition that I was talking about earlier, you are giving your body that little boost of hormone. That's like, you got this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That thing that kind of makes you kind of smirk when you walk in,
Yep.
because you know that everything is together.
Yep.
And that's okay. Fake it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at a certain point, it won't be fake anymore.
Mm.
It'll just be what is.
Oh, yeah.
It'll just be what is. And so if it's that thing, you need that routine. What they say, some sports athletes have to repeat a certain number of baskets before
Right.
a game to
Right.
feel that they're ready for the game.
Right.
There's some runners, right? I see them at the PT test making us all look crazy because they ran a half a mile before they had to run a mile.
Right. Right.
Like, what you doing? We don't need to see that. But if that's what you need to feel good going into like a fitness examination, I used to in college and in high school, my fear was to walk in and forget everything that I just studied
Oh, yeah.
because of the questions.
Oh, yeah.
And I always felt in college that there were so many smarter people, so many people who didn't have the opportunity to sit where I'm sitting. To know what I'm able to know, to experience what I was able to experience, and I could freeze. A little test anxiety, and my routine became, I always asked for a white sheet of paper. And on that white sheet of paper, I would just write down everything I knew. But at the very bottom of every single white sheet of paper, I'd write down what is.
See, this is knowledge bombs being dropped over here, and I will tell you, I can relate to everything you talked about, and hopefully the viewers and the listeners will be able to do so as well. Because there's been a fine line that I've walked where I hyped myself up so much that it made me look so great, and at the end, everybody's patting you, man, you killed that, you did well, and I always give that analogy of the duck gliding across the water, and it's so smooth and majestic, and that's the image you want to portray. But what they don't see is beneath the waterline, or the feet just like really kicking and moving really hard. And so you want to walk in looking like, hey, I've got this, and I think that's okay. And that brings about the newsletter that I researched prior to you and I coming on today. Her name is Carmel Murphy, and she talked about the 5 types of imposter syndrome, with the first one being the expert. And the expert is, you know all the answers, you have all the facts, but you can kind of also beat yourself up if you don't. Have you had someone that has gone through the expert phase or the expert type of the imposter syndrome?
Definitely. I think in our field, there's many times in meetings where you have a lot of expertise, but you might not be the expert in all the things. So let's think about a manager at a corporation, and in the officer corps, that's usually kind of our field grade, senior CGOs, where you've touched on a lot of different things. And you might have been able to go deep in one.
Mm-hmm.
But you walk into the meeting and it's all about that thing that you just took a tour of 2 years ago, not the shop that you worked in for a year and a half.
That's right.
But you're the expert in the room. And you're like, that's exactly what we do, right? Right? And you can feel as if the expertise that you've gained does not apply to the meeting in which you are in. You can fake being more of an expert than you are, or let's just say you are the expert. And you are the one that knows it. You are the one that understands where widget A goes with widget B and how to get this process to here. But you are battling with, will they listen? Maybe they do know more than I do. Maybe I can't the freeze, right? The
Right.
flight, fight,
Right.
or faint, right? It's
Right.
locking up your throat.
Right.
You can't
Or it can even be like, are they just testing me and challenging me to see if I really know the answer when they know the right
correct.
answer and they're going to see what I'm
Yes.
going to say. Yeah,
Stump the dummy.
stomp the dummy. That's a tough one. And then
Yeah.
that next one is, number 2 type that she mentions in her newsletter was the superwoman or the superman, and then that's the one where you're just like, I can handle everything. I've
Everything.
got it. I've already convinced myself that I'm a fraud walking in. So now I've got to really show, and I need that validation. And I'm going to stay at work longer. I'm going to be the workaholic. So I'm going to actually show that I am that superwoman or superman.
Right.
How about that aspect of it?
So I struggle with that one a great deal personally on all the different hats that people kind of wear that I wear. I'm just going to grind it out. They won't know that I don't know because I will grind it out. I will make it so I do know. I will figure this out. And honestly, right now, I'm tired. I want a nap.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you end up actually with that particular imposter syndrome. When I looked a couple more things up about that particular topic, that's when people snap,
Mm. Mm.
right? That's when you start losing personal relationships and you kind of lose your sense of self. And so one of the things, and I'll jump a question a little bit. One of the things as a coach mentor that I try to do, even for me, what is my hobby?
Mm.
Because if you are the one grinding it out, guess what you don't have anymore? Hobbies.
Mm. Oh yeah, I can relate.
Right? The thing you just do because you just enjoy it
Right.
for no other reason.
Yep. I can
So,
relate. I'm
yeah.
glad that I'm actually doing this podcast because I was suffering from that prior to actually establishing this podcast. I didn't necessarily have any hobbies. It was all about work, and I wanted to be the greatest at everything I was doing. And some advice that a panel of colonels gave to the folks a few years ago when I was deployed was, hey, you need to be finding some time each day, even if it's just an hour. You need to find at least an hour each day to do what makes you you, whatever that is. That way you can actually stay in tune with yourself as well. And that can be hard for some.
Yeah, I got checked by my spouse.
That's the best check that you can get right there, because I get those checks too. Those things, that's a true reminder of, hey, I need you to reel it in a little bit. Don't forget who you are and where you come from as well. Now, this next one, type 3, is something that another one that I will tell you that I have suffered from and probably still suffer from today. It is something that I always tell people it is my greatest strength, but it is also my greatest weakness. It is being a perfectionist. I tell people that nobody can beat me up worse than myself. I want to have everything in a row, my I's dotted, my T's crossed, and I just want to make sure that I have high standards for myself. And then, of course, that makes me have high standards for others and all that other good stuff. Talk to me about the perfectionist aspect of imposter syndrome.
So a perfectionist tries to hide behind those I's and those T's. Like, how can you doubt me? Look how lovely this looks. How can you tell me that I don't know my stuff when I've got binders tabbed and everything? My calendar is, your desk is immaculate, right?
Right.
Everything's, little OCD, little bit, right?
Yep.
And the toughness, and I'll say from a leader hat, right? The toughness you give your people at first comes out as very inspirational. Oh, they want to make sure that everything's good to go. But it can also come out as micromanaging, because at a certain point you're like, I'll just do it myself to make it great.
Yep. That's perfect. That's a perfect segue to the next one. Actually, type number 4, you just do it myself. And that one's called the soloist, right? It's like, I'll just do it by myself, And that the other part of that though is, you want to do it by yourself primarily because sometimes anyway, you're afraid to ask for help. And by you, I mean myself. I've been there. You're afraid to ask for help, not essentially because you think you're actually going to get the help, but you feel that asking for help is a weakness, which might expose you as a fraudulent type of leader in your position, therefore driving that imposter syndrome thought that you might have in your head.
Exactly. That one touches home this week with a kid experience of trying to do it themselves and finding out that there's an entire system of people here to help you. So you won't break. Once again, all of these imposter syndromes usually leads to some kind of break, some kind of epiphany moment. Hopefully that comes from joy, but sadly, most change comes from some kind of catastrophe or chaos moment. Do it yourself. feeds back into perfectionism, can feed right back into expertise. All of these things, just once again, you're just feeding the monsters that are in your head. When you find individuals who aren't able to ask for help, the questioning a leader does has to be a little different. It can't just be, oh, you don't know that? Oh, I can't believe you don't know that, because that just feeds that monster even more. It could easily be, maybe I forgot to let you know about blank. Or, last year I didn't know that either. And I had to get so-and-so to help me out with this.
Yep. 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 I love that, and then also, because you are so great at this, you seamlessly tied us into the type number 5, and then it's called the natural genius. The natural genius is kind of similar to being a perfectionist, but instead of just trying to get everything right, you actually want to have all the knowledge and the information. You want to make sure you know everything, and then to a certain extent, some may avoid being in the presence of those leaders because they don't want to get caught not knowing the answer. So you're always trying to make sure that you have the information. You're the natural genius, and everybody's coming to you to get those right answers. And then the moment you don't have it, you're kind of down on yourself, and it's like, that kind of ruined my image. How about that aspect of it?
Oh my gosh. My day, every day. You don't have that answer? Should I have that answer? You don't know about this? Oh. So that particular imposter syndrome to me gets bred through, like you mentioned, wanting to be a perfectionist, wanting to be the one that people can come to. And I offer this. I wrote it in a book I had. That if you are the expert at one thing, you can't be promoted to the next thing. Because I need you right there to be the expert at that particular thing. So I can't lose you in the position you're in. And so normally when I have those people who are naturally geniuses at the thing, I'm like, so this is where you want to be for the next 15 years, 20, like right here. And they look at you like, but I'm a genius. I should move up. Well, my friend, if you're such a tactical expert at this, I can't afford to have you move up and away.
Oh, you get punished. So now you're putting yourself in a position to be punished by being so good. So if you're the expert, I can't let you go anywhere else, right? So you got to be smart enough to know that I need to dabble in this a little bit and dabble in that. So an experience that I had just this week alone was leading a team, knowing that I was not the smartest person in the room. But the moment I realized that I didn't have to be, I just needed to know who they were and how to effectively utilize them, then you actually help the team benefit overall and get the job done. Now, Colonel Dr. Stephanie Wilson, you just let something slip out, so I can't just bypass that. I heard you say something about a book you wrote, so we got to talk about that.
Yeah, I did do that.
We got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. Tell me about the book.
I did. And if you want to talk about imposter syndrome, the doctor thing bothered me a bit, but I'm getting used to it, right?
Okay.
And then I was talking to my husband, and I read leadership books, but I also like to read fiction. I like a lot of fiction books because to me, that is an imaginary way that people are putting leadership lessons into practice. And then I wonder what you can take from that, because in any kind of hero arc, there's usually some type of revelation. There's some type of team building. There's some type of discovery of self. What do you need to be a leader? Oh, some kind of revelation, some kind of team building, some type of discovery of self. And as I told my amazing spouse about this, he looked at me one day and he's like, well, why don't you write something? And I'm like, I should. So I started collecting vignettes and little quotes and things I wanted people to reflect on. And he's laughing at me because he keeps me humble. And he's like, look, I want to be a better leader. I know other people do, but ain't nobody got time to read, 500-page how to be a better leader. And I said, no, I want to do bite-sized leadership type of thing. So it's like a leadership bites, play on words, like, ha, 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 leadership bites, right? And he literally, he said, well, make it a bathroom book because I need to know how to become number one while I'm going number two.
I love that. I love it.
So the book is called Leadership Bites, How to Become Number One.
No kidding.
And it's based on really short really a short quote, a short story application, and then a charge.
Oh
And then I give
man.
reflection pages in the back. It is no more than like 85 pages. It's tiny. Well, it's this big.
No,
I'm
put
in
it.
the I'm in the library.
Let's see this. Let's see this on the screen. I want to
No,
see this book.
not doing it. I'm not there
No,
yet.
you're not.
But
Okay,
my point
okay.
of the imposter syndrome portion is I've had this done. I've had this done for almost a year.
Oh, okay.
I finished it on vacation. We were on a cruise, and I'm like, nobody's bothering me. I can
Mm,
just, be in it. And I finished what I wanted to do in the arc of it all, like in the middle of the ocean on a cruise overlooking. Yeah, I won't even say what I was overlooking, but it was lovely. And I sat on it
hmm.
because I then thought, what do I know to be telling people how to lead?
Mm.
What is it? Why would they listen to me? And I was talking to my 17-year-old daughter, and she's like, didn't you finish that book a while? I was like, yeah. I even had the cover art done. Like I paid to have the cover art done. It's sitting there. And she's like, what are we doing with this, Mom? And I'm like, well, Becca, maybe I'll print a couple for like the family and I'll see my name in print and it'll be fine. And this 17-year-old who I raised, and then I don't know how this came out, but she was like, what makes you think I'm the only one who wants to read this?
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing though is we can't go buy it yet, right?
Oh, you can. It's on
Oh,
Amazon now.
so it is on Amazon now.
It is on
Okay.
Amazon now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there now. And
So one more time for the people, if you're okay with it, for the people listening and watching, give them the title of your book again and tell them where to go find it.
awesome. So the title is Leadership Bites: How to Become Number One While Going Number Two.
Mm-hmm.
It's the quote, Stephanie Q. Wilson, PsyD, is the author. I use my doctoral name.
Nice.
See, I'm trying to help myself.
Nice.
And it's out on Amazon. I do not have an ebook option on purpose.
Oh, nice. Hard copy book. Take
Hard.
it. I like it.
Yeah.
That's going to come up here in a second, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So first of all, let me say personally, this has been great in a lot of ways. It's been great for me. I learned a lot. So I envision that once I release this, I'm going to play it back a few times and just, whenever I need some information about imposter syndrome or just have one of those days where I'm might be feeling a little challenged, I can play this back. And so, following your lead and following people like you, I think is going to be helpful, not just to myself, but for a lot of people. So, I appreciate you spending time. And I'm going to throw your titles out there because I do the same with my spouse. She's a colonel, she's a doctor, she's a mom, she's a wife, she's everything. She's out there just straight killing it and overcoming things like imposter syndrome, and maybe not even overcoming, but utilizing it to your benefit. I think there's a way to do that as well. So each episode, I like to end with a little game that I call "What is your preference?"
Okay.
It is a quick 10-question, whatever comes to your mind. What is your preference? So I'm going to start with question number one. When it comes to pizza, regarding pizza, let's think about fruit. Do you prefer your pizza with fruit or no fruit?
No fruit.
No fruit. So no pineapple for you.
No.
Okay. Basketball greatness: Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Michael Jordan.
Okay. Now, here's the book thing. Audio or paperback?
Paperback.
Paperback. I'm gonna take a quick pause on my question. What's your preference for paperback and why?
I love the smell of a book. I love being able, like literally right next to me is from our bookshelf, and I love the ability to open that and just cuddle in a chair and read it. I told my husband once, when we toured the Library of Congress, and you're standing up on that ledge and you can look down and see like the massive books and all the statues and all the history and art and things that we've collected across America. That is our literary collection, but they also have other things. And I looked at him and said, this is my heaven. Like, give me a chair and some tea and just keep handing me books.
That's
like,
awesome.
I would love it.
I love that. I love that. Question number 4. Gym, workout. Do you prefer leg day or arm day?
I need more arm days, but I love me a leg day. I love a leg day. Got to keep the gams good.
That's awesome. Next question, number 5. And none of the above is quite okay. With regard to your libations, do you prefer a cocktail or a glass of wine?
Cocktail.
Cocktail. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Number 6, communication. Text or pick up the phone and give me a call.
Depends on what we're talking about.
Okay. Okay. So you're not going to be like, I see those people like, why is this person calling me? And they start flipping out. They could have just sent me a text.
Nah.
Okay. Travel. Sounds like you've had a decent travel experience as well. Do you prefer a road trip or would you just rather hop on a flight?
Hop on a flight. But I
Okay.
end up taking road trips because we're cheap.
You're frugal. It's called being frugal.
Excuse me. Yes, I'm frugal. I'm frugal.
All right. Okay. When it comes to attire, would you prefer to just wear a t-shirt or just put on something fancy like a dress?
Depends on the event.
Depends on the event. So some days more relaxed, some days more formal.
Yeah, I think in keeping with this podcast, sometimes the worse I feel about going out somewhere, the best I'll try to look.
Oh, oh,
Because as
oh.
my mama told me, if you put your red lipstick on and a dress that makes you feel like,
Yep.
then
Yep.
what's going to put you down today?
I can relate to that. I'm keep moving away from my questions because this topic is so good. I will tell you right now, when I go into my class every day now, everyone's like, man, Shooter, you're the best dressed and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm not trying to go to school to get the best dressed award, but I walk out of my door every day going, if you look good, you feel good. And once I walk out and I take a look in the mirror and I look good, it makes me feel good too. So
Exactly.
I can relate. Heroes, Superman or Iron Man?
Ooh, Iron Man.
Iron Man, more modern.
No, not because of modern. Superman was born with gifts and had to decide how to use them. Iron Man had to develop his gifts and then decide how to use them.
Oh, we about to mic drop. You're just dropping mics, right here. Question number 10. When it comes to music, last question. Do you prefer vinyl or do you prefer digital?
Digital. Only because I'm on the move so much and it's in my pocket.
Mhm.
And there's nothing, I listen to horrible grown-up music on my runs, like horrible, like Southern bass booty music, some
Me too.
trap music, but
Me
it's
too.
got an amazing beat
Yep.
for working out.
Yep. Yep.
And do not follow me on my runs for what I'm saying. But I love that. But I will say that my dad used to get up on Sundays and play. He had a reel to reel. And we would hear opera, we would hear musicals, we would hear gospel on a reel to reel music. And there is something about that sound
Clean
that is
music.
so pure,
That's
right? And
awesome.
so when I hear that, I think of my dad and home, but I prefer having it in my pocket.
I hear you. I hear you. I think I can relate. I like both. It depends on what I'm doing. But when I'm running, I think my playlist sounds a lot like yours. So listen, ma'am, I want to say, first of all, again, thank you very much for taking the time to just come out here and share your knowledge and wisdom. I hope this is going to help some people. I know it's helped me as well. So much appreciated. And we thank you for your time.
It's a privilege.
Absolutely.
Keep doing it.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Thanks for dialing in. Until next time, I'm out.